Yeah. call us to order. First thing I'm going to remind us to do is to turn off our cell phones, please. Then I'm going to remind us that as we gather today, we respectfully acknowledge that the land on which the city of Hood River sits is the ancestral home of indigenous peoples. Hoods and Nez Perce, Umatilla, Warm Springs, Yakima, and other tribes who stewarded this land for generations. We recognize the lasting impact of colonialism and commit to working together for a more just and sustainable future. Please join me as we rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I know that we're shifting things around a little bit, Abigail. The agenda additions and corrections, we are going to have FEMA.
Mayor, the FEMA is not going to be here, but I'd like to make some comments in that space instead.
Great.
And then we'd like to move the urban renewal agenda to the end of tonight's meeting if possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We moved urban renewal to the end because we saw that we have a number of folks who want to speak to us about a topic which is city council and not urban renewal. So then you all don't have to sit through urban renewal. So business from the audience. Has anyone who wishes to speak not yet had a chance to sign up? And Jen, do we have anyone online who wishes to speak to us? Great. So we'll just go in order. If folks could limit your time to 3 minutes, and if you could, if someone has already said a bit of what you're going to say, hearing it twice doesn't always necessarily make us believe it more. So first Jody and then Caroline Kohler. Make the, touch the white edge, yeah.
Okay, you're all set.
Okay, thank you.
Make sure to stay close to it. Thank you.
Okay, the current options proposed in the council packet do not specify what is being used for weed spray and fertilizer and does not restrict their use. Crystal Greens had a month to propose alternatives. Their best number 3 option costs over $80,000 per year just to pull weeds while still spraying chemical fertilizers. These people do not know how to maintain the land without chemicals. We can do a lot with $80,000. Please consider the following compromised alternative. Eliminate the use of all chemicals, change the contract duration to 1 year, take the price reduction, the cost of chemicals and the labor to apply them, plus $20,000 and work with a select group, a small group of community experts who will take care of the weed issue with a youth community educational program. This alternative reduced costs by $60,000 this year and starts the land regeneration on our public lands. It's a no-brainer. Weeds, the big issue seems to be weeds. The contractor talked about the need to spray clover on 127. Clover is a nitrogen fixer. Plants need nitrogen to grow. No fertilizers are needed when we protect the nitrogen fixers, which harvest the nitrogen free from the air. If we are talking about weeds, we must also talk about the ubiquitous dandelion. Dandelions are a wonder food and healing medicine, rich sources of beta-carotene, vitamin C, iron, zinc, many nutrients our bodies need. High in antioxidants, rich in potassium. Eaten as medicine, they support liver health, fight bacteria like staph infections, neutralize free radicals, reduce bad cholesterol, raise good cholesterol, protect bones, help brain function, alleviate depression, back pain, truly the miracle medicine. Bottom line, when grown in chemical-free environments, we can actually harvest these plants and use for food and medicine. What has been sold to us as weeds are the nitrogen fixers, food, and medicine we need. This is a what I suggested, the compromised alternative. This is a compromise which gives all of us time to renegotiate an entirely new contract which supports our community's health, labor forces, and builds a future that is healthy for all of us. If we aren't willing to compromise and delay, yeah, if we aren't willing to compromise till all of that next year, then let's take the time together now, including us and our expertise, to resolicit this contract for this year. This small group of folks, I'm running out of time, the small group of folks who are asking for change include experts in regenerative land care and are connected throughout this community. And we are the folks who've been working at this for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Caroline and then Benji. It's all good. It's
Oh,
green.
Okay, it's green. Okay, first of all, thank you so much for your consideration of the Crystal Greens contract and for engaging us in this process. I'm a resident, a parent, and a teacher in this town, and I go to the park pretty much every single day with my kids. And multiple times have been turned away because of spraying. Either they were actively spraying or there were cautionary signs up, which maybe you have seen, saying recently sprayed chemicals here and they're scary looking, and I run the other direction with my two kids who are very small. And either way, our public spaces were off limits to us in those moments. And the harmful effects of chemical sprays are well documented. They don't just harm our environment and ecosystems, but also they are carcinogenic, really harmful to kids with their developing lungs and brains and bodies. So that's something I feel really strongly about. It's not just the spraying, but in the fall, the park is pretty much a hit or miss for us because of the leaf blowing. They're gas powered and they're loud and they're smelly and there's a ton of dust pollution. I have watched Crystal Greens blow 4 leaves up the hill of Jackson Park, all the way up the hill. And they're just, like, that's what we're paying them to do. And we also don't go to the park during those days because it's really obnoxious. It's not an enjoyable time to be outside. I think we can do better than this. I think it's a cool opportunity for Hood River to do better than this. I know that there were 3 options that have been proposed by Crystal Greens, and I urge us to consider a 4th. I know that we might not have time to do that because the contract renews, I believe, on March 1st. So potentially we could sign a 1-year service extension with Crystal Greens on the condition that all landscaping services be conducted without chemicals starting March 1st. And in the meantime, we solicit bids from local contractors who are committed to maintaining our parks without chemicals and without gas-powered tools. The leaf blowers being the most obnoxious. And then we could use the cost savings from eliminating chemicals to reinvest into a task force with local experts who could determine how to manage the weeds. Thinking down the road, we could also explore an education program that involves students in sustainable land management. Jackson Park is right there by the middle school. There could be some really cool opportunities there. I'm a teacher, always thinking about that stuff. So I think this is an opportunity for Hood River to set a precedent, to lead by example, and to call for meaningful change.
Thank you. Benji and then Maggie.
Well, shucks. She made a lot of points that I wanted to make. Again, thank you for hearing voices. Gosh, yeah, she took a lot of my points. There is that bit of like, here we are, we've been aware of the impact of DDT, from the 50s. We've been aware of the impacts that chemicals have on our environment. Some of those impacts are not as clear as, the near extinction of a number of different bird species based on the use of the spraying of DDT back in the day. Yeah, the implications that these things are, they don't just go away. They're in the earth, they're in the water. We don't see them, therefore they're not there. The impacts and the studies should be enough to demonstrate that it is not in the best interest of any living thing aside from people who are limited to their perception of reality being just what they see. Green grass is nice, yeah, sure. There are so many other options, and yeah, definitely like our teacher, fellow teacher just expressed. There's so many different options as to what we can do to take care of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Maggie and then Krista.
Thank you, council. I am here to also request the revision of the contract with Crystal Greens and support the request of no chemicals, pesticides, herbicide spray on public lands of Hood River. I come to you as a citizen who works in the community as a landscaper, a nanny, a caregiver for animals, elderly, and as well as a death doula and grief counselor. During the call to order, Mayor Blackburn, you recognize the lasting impact of colonialism and call for working together for a more just and sustainable future. And I can think of other ways, but this is such a beautiful way for us to come together and look at the way that we treat our land as being directly related to perpetuating the lasting impacts and harms of colonialism by using herbicides and pesticides to kill unwanted plant species because we might consider them a nuisance or they don't fit in aesthetically. We're perpetuating this cycle. By treating the land and soil with care for the sake of long-term soil and water health, not just for the sake of aesthetics and convenience, is a massive way to be a part of breaking this cycle. And it's time to take action and make change. We can't wait any longer. We must make choices that support our environment and every single living being that is impacted by our choices. The change starts here and today. I request and invite that we consult with local people who live in this area who are skilled and knowledgeable. There are so many people that are skilled and knowledgeable on how best to steward the land that we are occupying. I understand that this is going to take like way more time and may cost more money, but if there is true intention to take action and make choices that are aligned with these repairs, I really call on you to think outside the box and to consider the long-term impacts and damage that we're causing to our soil, water, plants, insects, wildlife, children, pets, everyone. And while it might be a really uncomfortable, clumsy, messy process to move in this different direction, it is one that would be in respect and reciprocity with our home, this earth, and would set an example for other small cities to see what is possible when we commit to recognizing and halting the impact and harms of colonialism. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Krista and then Alicia or Alicia.
Hi. I am also asking to stop the use of chemicals in our public spaces. I am 33 and I was diagnosed with lymphoma 2 years ago. Cancer rates are rising extremely fast in this country and it's terrifying. I have countless friends that have cancer actively that are my age. I just think the use of pesticides and herbicides is contributing to rising cancer rates and it needs to be addressed. It needs to be stopped.
Thank you. Alicia and then Matthew.
I'm Eliza. So nice to meet you all.
Sorry, Eliza.
That's okay. I write horrible handwriting and easily mispronounce name. But I'm a local resident. I've lived in Hood River for the past 4 years, and Caroline informed me of this yesterday, which is coincidence because I've worked for the past 5 years supporting universities all throughout the US in almost 30 different states with reducing and eliminating their pesticide usage. This is directly in conversation relation with their grounds managers, with their sustainability teams, with their students who often come with the dilemma similar to Caroline mentioned of like, pesticides are being sprayed and they have to close their windows. They can't go outside on their grounds, similar to what we experience. And I know the tension is aesthetics and necessary to keep safety. There's a public safety in removing weeds or brambles or things that we have. So I'm really well versed in this and experienced in this and understand the tension with like working with contractors that aren't directly city employees can be super complicated. But I've spent years actually supporting these groundskeepers who don't actually want to be spraying these toxic pesticides, including Dwayne Lee Johnson, who was famously sued Monsanto and won for his exposure to glyphosate. That actually led us at UC Berkeley, where I went to school, to stop the use of glyphosate and create a task force like many folks are asking for here, where we came together to kind of have a conversation around like what could alternative land use be. We actually got a lot of funding and grants to do organic management and a transition to organic management, and actually like puts the campuses on the map in a different way. So what I'm urging today is also a consideration of stopping the use of pesticides or figuring out a phase. It can't stop is hard in some cases, but also a determination of what are we considering needing to be sprayed. Is it clovers? Is it dandelions? As folks mentioned, a lot of these things are really not super harmful and there can be really easy fixes. Another thing that's been mentioned is like manual weeding, which I know can be a lot of labor, but what we've done also is like create student weeding days or like town weeding days. And I think it actually has like brought a lot of folks together in that realm, and this area just doesn't need to get sprayed for the next 3 months, that kind of thing. So there's ways as a community we can figure out a reduction or elimination of pesticides. And I really do believe, like as folks mentioned, like this is a way to put this town on a map in a way. If we're making a statement, there's other towns in Oregon that have done it, but none that have been super firm on it. And we have resources specifically in Oregon, including Beyond Toxics and the Northwest Center for Alternative to Pesticides, which all have incredible folks that would be happy to work with a town like Hood River on figuring out a plan. And if it's a 1-year extension and needing to reconsider, I just, as a Hood River citizen, would love to see this be an area of focus and really believe that it can be a strong case for like how to make this community stronger and show that we're doing things differently. And also maybe supporting our local landscapers who have tons of experience in this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Eliza. Matthew?
I'll keep it short. Thank you for hearing us. I think what we're dealing with is an issue of public trust, and the public would generally trust the city council to make a good decision for the environmental safety of everyone in that public. I'm an organic farmer on the west side, sandwiched between a bunch of conventional farmers, and it's a sphere where you can realize from my perspective that the general trust in people has failed to do the right thing when it comes to pesticide and herbicide use and non-organic fertilizers. And you guys have a very, very cool opportunity to do something right and instill public trust. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Jared.
Hi, my name is Jared, and again, thank you very much for hearing our voices. I'd like to note that when I Googled City of Hood River today, just to look at your website, the very first thing that came up said providing public safety. And I'd like to just focus my brief comment on risk and note that I think in your positions, I'm not familiar with the documentation, but public safety is a really important piece of what you do. And even if we were to limit the scope just to this contract, I think there's a question of justice and safety for the workers who have to handle the pesticides that we're asking them to use on the lands. They're putting themselves at risk in the process of using it, and then putting community members at risk who use those spaces. So I just wanted to introduce risk as a concept to the conversation as well. I thank you for hearing us.
Thank you, Jared. So that's the end of the public comment. I'm kind of inclined to pull the Crystal Springs topic off the consent agenda and talk about it now. Is that okay with council? Folks are here. Adam, you're the one listed. Is that okay with you? I'm going to say a moment about protocol here. I've kind of, I can see both sides of the enthusiastic clapping part of this conversation. It can also have a chilling effect on opposing viewpoints. I understand that you want to express support for what the person said, but we're going to have a discussion now, and I'm concerned about maintaining order. So I'm putting that out there first, and we'll be perhaps somewhat firm about maintaining order during this conversation. Thank you. So we're going to pull Crystal Greens off consent, and we're
Yeah.
going to talk about it now.
Great.
Is everybody okay with that? Go ahead, Adam. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. Oh, excuse me. Adam Schmid, Public Works Director for the City of Hood River. On page 28 of your packet, you will find the Crystal Greens Landscape Service Contract Agreement. There are, well, I guess I presented last month on the same topic. The council suggested that we go back and come up with a more environmentally friendly application for some spraying that is being done in the parks. So we have provided 3 options in this council packet. Option number 1 being no change to the previous past 4 years, what we've been doing. Option 2 would be to adopt more environmentally friendly pesticide or herbicide. And option number 3 was no spraying and only hand pulling. So within those 3 options, there's no price difference between option 1 and 2, and then option 3 with hand pulling weeds in the park. There was a significant increase in that, as you can see. I am joined by Matt Gray with Crystal Greens right now, and I just kind of like Matt to go over the proposals that Crystal Greens has presented, and yeah, open it up to questions after that.
Thank you, Adam. Hi, Matt. I see you. I see you're off mute. Welcome.
Thank you. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I will have to say first off that as a landscaper, nothing gives me more pleasure than seeing people interacting with the landscape that we maintain. And everyone's passion for the landscape is really exciting to me. And ultimately, we want to provide a safe and useful place for everyone. When we were approached about extending the contract, we came up with what Adam referred to as the first option, which was maintaining the landscape in the way we have over the last 4 years, as mentioned. And then Adam came back with some concerns around herbicides and pesticides. And I will have to note up front that over that 4 years, we have changed some of the chemicals that we've used. And that's not reflected here, but we have evolved our program to be more environmentally sound. And that is embodied in option 2, where we've adopted a chemical that's much less harmful than what was used previously, and gives us a way to control weeds that is much better for the soil, better for the environment. And I will say, as these products come along that show promise, we are always looking to use them. In this case, the product is Safari, and it is an iron-based weed killer. And of course, iron occurs naturally in the soil. It is something that is much safer to spray, so safer for our applicators, and also safer to be around as the weeds take on the chemical and die. And then the third option was one without chemicals. And this is something that we do offer some of our customers and something that has been successful. We caution people that there will be weeds, that there needs to be weed tolerance, because to deal with weeds, they have to get to a certain size before they can be effectively removed by hand or mechanically. But it is, a landscape service that moves forward free of chemicals. And along similar lines, we have adopted practices that are moving away from gas-powered machines, and as those become more efficient and more powerful, we are certainly adopting them. And it's our goal to leave the smallest footprint possible as we service the parks. So those three options are what we see as the best way for the parks to be maintained in a usable manner. One that includes, green grass free of weeds that can, sometimes even be harmful themselves, but also makes it usable space that everyone can enjoy.
Thank you, Matt. Who wants to kick it off up here? Grant.
Thanks, Matt. I got a question for you. I'm not necessarily a chemist, but I have a question about the biodegradability of Safari. Can you speak to its ability or how long it takes to biodegrade?
Yeah, great question. And I'm not a chemist either. I know that it is mostly iron. Iron occurs naturally in the soil. So while there will be concentrations of iron, I think that its biodegrading will be a natural process of the soil, and not something that leaches or creates any long-term concerns.
And then I assume that you'd be able to share the MSD, the material safety data sheet, the MSDS, with us on that product as well. Yes.
Yes, and I believe Adam has that as well.
Thanks.
One thing I'd like to add just before we go into another question is there was some public comment on the material safety data sheet, and we will include that in the language in the contract as well. So I just wanted to add that. So the language will be in the contract of the chemical that would be used.
Doug?
Excuse me. Thanks, Matt. Just a couple questions, if I may. First one being, can you speak to, we just talked about MSDS regarding safety of handling chemicals and so on and so forth. Other regulating bodies, the state of Oregon, ORS 634, for example, federal restrictions. Can you talk about how you decide what to use, how much to distribute, et cetera, and how you take into account state regulations, federal regulations, so on and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. So all of our applicators are licensed through the state of Oregon. And so they have not only passed the tests necessary to get their license, but they are required to keep up with ongoing educational credits to maintain their license. And then as a company, we are also required to file with the state of Oregon and maintain an active license along with the credits necessary to make sure that we're applying the chemicals not only in the fashion that we're supposed to, but in the conditions as well. And that extends to our suppliers as well. They're also governed by the same rules, and we have to maintain our license to procure and store the chemicals.
Thank you. You mentioned there was a change to the use of chemicals throughout the duration of the 4-year contract that just expired. Is that something that you can make city staff aware of when changes like that happen? Is there a way for us to ensure that we're using the best options as you are evolving? Because you indicated that you're looking to make changes, and how do we make sure that we would be lockstep with that?
Absolutely. And so, our industry is constantly evolving. When I started 25 years ago, we sprayed glyphosate all year round, all the time. And we have moved away from that in the last 25 years. And I would be happy to share all of that information with the city, including when we are planning to move to a different chemical, or when there's a chemical that shows viability that has increased safety. So absolutely open to that.
Thank you. And just one more, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind. You mentioned you had other customers that have taken the option to do weed pulling. Are these publicly funded institutions, cities? Are they private institutions? Who's opting for this?
Right. So the first customer that came to us was a hospital that had areas where they had people frequently using outdoor gardens, and didn't want the use of any chemicals. It started in a few courtyards, and then we incorporated larger areas of the hospital. And the program that we're under includes yearly applications of mulch to keep weeds down. It's also a situation where we work with the hospital because they will often have volunteers that hand pull weeds. So it's a collaboration really to make sure that it's a usable landscape that is safe and weed free. I might also say it's an area that a long time ago was full of blackberries and bramble and overgrown and unused, and now it's a functioning cut flower garden. So it certainly is a success story on a much smaller scale than the parks we're talking about, but it is something that has worked where we've gone without chemical, all organic.
Thank you.
Great. Just a quick follow-up for that. How long did it take to establish or set up this program with the hospital? To the point we are now, it took about 5 years. I would say that the first 2 years there it was basically we had to really come to common ground in terms of expectations, and so I would say 2 years until both sides were comfortable with the work we were doing and the product that we were putting out.
Anna.
I have a couple of questions. How often are or will the herbicide that you're proposing, the Safari, actually be applied to each park? Like, how often are these actually applied?
Yeah, great question. These are applied twice a year, and in occasions where there are large outbreaks, we might add a third application, but twice a year in general.
And I wanted to clarify, I was curious about the actual spraying, but I appreciate what the audience was stating earlier.
Yeah.
The residual is much longer, and I know that's a key point. The other question I had is just on a financial basis, considering an adjustment of the term of the renewal, from 5 years to 1 year impact the pricing? Was the term or the prices that are presented are based on a 5-year renewal, not a 1 year? Is there an impact to the cost if it were to be just 1 year?
Sorry, was that question directed at me?
I'm sorry, that's a question for Matt or Adam, I guess.
Okay.
I assume we'd have to renegotiate the contract if you want to change the terms to 1 year. So, I mean, I certainly, if he wishes to speak to it, but it would be a new term of contract.
Matt, the question was, would the price of the contract increase if we didn't choose a 5-year and went with a 1-year contract?
In general, there's a slight increase in the shorter duration of the contract, just because a contract of this size, we need to maintain a certain amount of equipment. So there would be a slight increase, yes, for just 1 year.
Adam, is something like a 5-year term something you look for in terms of negotiating something longer for cost savings in general? Is that a reason to do that?
I would say, yeah, and I think it's a relationship. It has to do with a relationship with the contractor as well. I think this particular contract has been great. We've had no complaints with Crystal Greens, and yeah, I think changing it around more frequently, could create possible just issues with those short-term contracts.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Gladys. Sorry about that. Thanks, Grant.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you good.
Yeah, okay, great. This is a question for staff. Do we have any data on the impact of current pesticide use on local water sources, soil health, and biodiversity? This is definitely a conversation where I truly wish Tim was here to provide his knowledge and wisdom.
I do not, Gladys.
Thank you. And I just want to take a moment to thank everyone that has submitted public comments, who is here in person. And Matt, thank you for being here today. When this contract was first being discussed, I think, I don't know, I can't remember when it was, but I was definitely on council at that time. And there were a lot of comments in the statements that have been submitted to us of like, why didn't you choose a local vendor? And we did. We definitely connected, or I know that staff connected with local folks. And at that time, the reason that we ended up going with Crystal Greens was simply because it was most cost effective. Truly recognizing the importance of working with local vendors whenever and if at all possible. And that's definitely something that my peers and I continue to discuss as we continue to move forward and look at these contracts. With that being said, I am completely open to going back to the drawing board on this one and having Matt and Adam had the conversation of what would it look like for a 1-year extension in the meantime, and a couple individuals in the audience who sound like are landscaping experts willing to provide their expertise. I would be open to having staff suggest or connect with those individuals. I am one person in this council, and so my peers would have to agree on that, but I understand the importance of ensuring that we are being good stewards of the land moving forward, and that sometimes this type of innovative work is a little different. And I'm completely open to what would it look like to just have no chemicals at all within our parks where folks are recreating. I do want to ask a question of either Matt or Adam. If we went without any sort of chemicals, and I'm not a landscaper, so I don't know, do the weeds have to be hand pulled, or is that something that, like a lawnmower or something could get rid of? So I'm trying to understand, how did the hand pulling come into the contract?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So, when you're removing weeds, it's best to remove roots and all. And so while you can do it mechanically, a lot of times you won't get the roots, and you can actually spread the weeds, and it can become a bigger problem. We've found that the best weed control is a combination of what we're calling hand pruning or hand pulling, but also adding a fresh layer of mulch. That can help suppress some weeds, but also makes pulling much easier. And when I talked about, and it's in the contract, mechanical removal, that is not with like a weed eater. That's a tool called a hula hoe that actually gets under the, and turns the weeds up. So hand pulling, I'm kind of using as, a broad term for saying not chemicals, not weed eating, not mowing over, and more or less dealing with the weeds by hand.
And that hospital that you mentioned, they went on a similar route as well, no chemicals and hand pulling?
That's correct. Yes. Yep. Yeah. And as I alluded to, it took a little while to get on the same page. So part of that was weeds, respond to moisture and soil temperature. And so you get different weeds throughout the year. And we had to learn the right way to respond to the weeds, but also the customer had to understand that there were going to be areas that had weeds while we dealt with them. So it is a process, but after a few years, we understand the landscape better, the customer understands it better, and it's worked out really well. There are some weeds that can be harmful. Poison oak, poison ivy. There are thistles that are dangerous, and in no way are they a threat when you've got a landscape contract, because they'll be taken care of when they're very small. But it is something to consider. You don't want an area to go entirely wild. It should have a plan around it, and any of these plans take care of that very well.
Thank you. My last comment, just to my peers and those that are in the audience, anytime that there's any sort of additional costs to the general fund, I know that we as a council really are prioritizing housing matters. We want to make sure that folks have places to live here, and that we have more housing projects like our Mariposa Village that we're going to discuss today. So that's where I find a little bit of conflict, is if we're going to be paying more for a specific service and it's coming out of our general fund, then that means that we're going to have less dollars towards housing. Again, completely open to redesigning what this looks like. I'm just one voice in that, so thank you.
Thank you, Gladys. So as we've all told each other many times, our job is mostly deciding at some point. That's the goal here. Any other comments or questions, or Amanda?
I just want to, I guess I just want to say I agree with Gladys that I'm definitely open to exploring more options. I know time is crunchy. I would be happy to see us kind of extend a 1-year contract. Ideally no chemicals, and just work with the community and see what we can do, what we can build together. I just really think that taking care of the land and the people that live here is super important. So I prioritize that, and I don't know where everybody else stands, but that's kind of where I stand. Because I understand it's going to take some time, but I would like to kind of work together and see what we can come up with. And I really like the idea of being progressive and being an example for other places to look to us if we can figure out some successful way to do this.
Thanks. Doug?
So I guess one more question maybe for Matt and for Adam here. So, let's say there was a 5-year contract and I'll have some other questions about what a program might look like to enhance, weed pulling, the sorts of things that were talked about earlier. Is there an ability to make a change order to the contract to say next year we don't want you to use chemicals and we have a weed pulling program. We'd like you to work with this other entity. Those sorts of things. Like I don't know what that's like for you, Matt, and in terms of change orders. Because certainly, to Adam's point, Crystal Greens has been doing a great job. They're a good vendor. We've had issues in the past with other vendors not being as professional, et cetera. They do a lot of other things other than just take care of weeds. So want to make sure to give that relationship a chance. Is there ability for change orders and so on and so forth? Like, let's say we developed a program for high school students to pull weeds. Could Crystal Greens work with them?
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. We would be happy to work with whatever the council came up with as a way forward. I think ultimately we want to partner with you to give you the landscape you want. And I think it would be great to be able to take areas to start with and make them chemical free. And if that's just a simple amendment to the contract, we're fine with doing that. But ultimately, we just want to give you the best usable space possible.
Thank you. Probably a question for staff. Crystal Greens was hired via RFP, right? There's often the question, why can't we just work with somebody local? And I get that, like, that's what we want to strive for. Is that legal, just to say we just want to hire somebody off the street that we think is a local person that's good and everything, or do we have to go out for RFP for someone to get expert advice in that way?
Thank you for the question, Councilor Stepina. Our procurement process is governed by state law, and I think if our city attorney were on, he could give you the actual ORS citation. I think I sent it to all of you earlier, but I think we're required to use I'm trying to remember the right language, the lowest qualified bid, and we're unable to use location as one of the scores. For two reasons. I think one, because Oregon state law. The second is, of course, the US Constitution and the Interstate Commerce Clause. Like if we had a qualified low bid that came from the state of Washington, if we chose not to accept that, then we'd be violating that Interstate Commerce Clause. So Dan is, our city attorney is just showing up on Zoom if he wants to comment on this as well.
Sure. Service contracts aren't controlled by lowest cost bid, but rather most qualified. So it's less prescriptive than when you buy a pickup truck, for example, when you engage someone in a professional services contract. And I view this as a services contract, not a goods and services contract. So most qualified, and so you issue a request for proposals and you make it as specific as possible, and then you evaluate all those bidders. State law does not allow you to limit it to local service providers. And as I recall, when you sent this out last time, there were none. Is that right? Yeah.
Correct. That's what we.
So that's a fundamental problem for Hood River in this situation, is that I think the next closest one was from the Dows, and it was a heck of a lot higher cost estimate. So you pick the most qualified, and then you start negotiating the cost. Is how it's supposed to work. But in this case, you can always say that you have a budget limitation or something like that to let prospective proposers know what's the reality in the situation. So state law allows you to add a preference for an Oregon company, just not a local company, even if there was one. So but it seems to me that a lot of the issues, all the issues that are raised here, are issues that can be resolved with this contractor, or you could specify this in a new request for proposals and see who responds to it. So there are a number of ways to address that, but you can't just limit it to local providers. And also, if you want, I heard someone mention having school children pull weeds. Have we checked with our insurance carrier on that? We would have to provide, workers' comp coverage, and it is sort of problematic giving, tools to small children and sending them out to do that sort of thing. So I would talk to me before you decide to do that, okay?
Absolutely.
I would also note that we do, this last summer, I think we had 4 puncture vine pulls in coordination with the Soil and Conservation District. So if folks are looking to pull weeds, we do already coordinate events. Those are at the waterfront. So lots of opportunities.
And then, to Councilor Rivera's point about funding this, we're going to spend $50,000 more. It's $50,000 out of the general fund. I don't think Chris can find that money. It's going towards other things. So my appetite for this is not let's halt progress, but this has to be funded somehow. I've been looking into, and speaking with Haley, if there's any grants that are addressing this type of thing. There's no grants to be had. Certainly the federal government doesn't seem to care much about the environment. So it sort of rests to the city of Hood River to fund this. And, we're basically working with the funding that's coming from taxes going into the general fund, and we only have so much of it to spend. So I'm more in favor of an option of working with Crystal Greens and then seeing if we can develop a way to improve it. If there are grants to be found, or if there are programs that we could go out for RFP and find a qualified individual to do the type of the work to be able to reduce, our reliance on this type of stuff, I'm all for it. I don't water my lawn. I don't use pesticides or herbicides on my lawn. And I'd love to eat organic all the time, but I can't afford to, right? It's kind of the point. That's the crux of this and the difficulty and why we all struggle with this. We'd love, I think, all of us up here to just say, let's just do this, but it costs a lot of money. So I don't want to put a pin in it and say, just, we'll revisit this in 5 years. Let's look for some creative ways to address it. But I don't want to hold up a 5-year contract while still not wanting to inhibit progress. So I'm not sure what the directive needs to be or what we'd have to direct staff to do. Look at grant opportunities, these sorts of things. And this is something we look at anyway. We look at, green infrastructure and credits that we can get from the government. But, understanding that we don't have any blind spots regarding the funding and these sorts of things, I think would be a good thing to go look at in tandem of this contract.
Thanks, counselors, for sharing your sort of interim thinking and where you're kind of at presently. It's helpful to, I think, all of us to hear the other point of view respectfully. And I will put in a plug for the deciding part of our job. If somebody would be willing to put up a motion, see if we have 4 votes for something. Grant.
Or I'll jump on it. I'll move that we authorize the city manager to sign a 5-year service agreement for Crystal Greens Landscaping in the amount of $191,000. Option 2. We move forward with option 2. And I would also like to preface this by saying that the goals of everyone that's spoken about on this issue are perfectly noble, and we can certainly move in this direction long term as we work through this as a direction long term. But for purposes of the motion, option 2.
Moved by Grant. Second by Ben. I just want to check. I see Adam writing. Is this motion sufficiently specific? Option 2, 5 years. Is that a complete?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Hold on. So moved and seconded. Go ahead, Amanda.
I feel like Doug kind of asked this, but I'm not really sure if I understand the answer. So if we go like, I feel like, yes, Crystal Green's great company, happy with them. But I'm a little bit unsure about what signing a 5-year contract locks us into. I know you were kind of like, can we shift things? but how much can we shift things? Obviously, there's a big cost difference from 2 to 3. So if we get to a point where we want to do 3 in 2 years or something, like how does that work? Why does it have to be a 5-year contract? What's our wiggle room in there? Or if we want to shift things more dramatically, do we need to sign a shorter contract?
Matt, are you open to some language in the contract that annually, we have a discussion about, the chemical portion of the contract?
Absolutely. I think that works on our end, and would love to get input to make sure the contract is exactly what you want. I think what we're talking about for the 5-year commitment is obviously the partnership, but also making sure that we're able to properly invest in the maintenance of the landscape. So if it's a yearly check-in and revision of how we approach it, I'm totally fine with that. Yep.
Amanda, any follow-up on that?
I guess just to make sure I understand. So that would be like, okay, if we don't change anything, this is our annual cost. But if we are allowed to revisit and change things, it might change the cost year to year. Is that correct?
I think that's a question for Adam or Matt.
Matt, did you catch her question?
If I may, I think the city attorney might be able to weigh in. If there was a big change of scope mid-contract, would we be able to negotiate that? Or would that be so significant that we'd need to have a new contract? Like, how big a change can we make mid-contract?
You can always amend the contract, but it has to be mutually agreed to.
Okay.
So it sounds like both parties are okay with the objective here, but it's going to take at least one season cycle to move in that direction. How close we get, is it close enough? And that may or may not require a change to the contract. If it triggers a cost change for the contractor, they'll want to be compensated for that. And so we'll know at that point the cost of moving the actual scope of work in the direction of less chemical input. So yes, all contracts are, you can reopen virtually all contracts upon mutual agreement. But it takes 2 to tango.
I recognize that we have a motion on the floor, but I think if folks can vote however, but I'd like to make another motion that is really around staff exploring other options. So I just wanted to make that clear before folks vote.
Thanks, Gladys. Doug.
Oh, geez. So yeah, I mean, like where my head is at on this, and thank you for making a motion. I'm not sure if other counselors feel the same, but I would be amicable to voting for option 2, provided that we had some language in the motion that would direct staff to look towards how do we not spend $50,000 doing this a year, but are there ways for us to I'm getting the nod from Gladys too. If we could look at it without to get to what I was getting at earlier, I'm not sure if that's something that could be placed upon a motion, or if staff just needs direction from us versus it being part of the motion. So procedurally, I'm just asking about that. Not sure if Dan or if Abigail or if anybody has, or Anna, what's the way?
Go ahead, Anna.
I just wanted clarification also that within the contract that's being presented, I mean, I could support option number 2, so long as it's understood that the way the contract is presented today gives us that flexibility to engage with local people. And that's basically what you were saying to Councilman Stepina, like, if we were to, and it sounded like, Matt, you were open to this, but with the way the contract is written today, and if we were to approve option number 2 this evening, could we still engage with local community members that have this expertise, and they could present maybe some proposals like of how they, and incorporate that into the service. And what I'm kind of picturing is in a year, maybe, or two, we allow, we go with less chemicals. We try to do some more natural options. And then this room is potentially filled with people who are angry that our parks look bad. Right now, that is a testament to the good work that Crystal Greens has done, is that we have public spaces right now. But it would be nice to see if we don't need any kind of revision to the agreement to understand for sure that we can continue with this option 2 in the agreement in the form that it is, but still have the opportunity to work with people locally to give suggestions on how we can implement less chemicals. Is that something that can be done under this current form of contract?
I don't think the current motion includes and work with creative ways with folks to come up with alternatives. I would suggest that if we want that, we should have a slightly different motion.
Yeah, my motion didn't preclude that either.
Yeah.
So if Crystal Greens in the city is amenable to include that in our contract, we can include that in the contract. The motion didn't preclude that from being a thing. So.
Doug.
What's the best way to do this, staff? How do we communicate? We will sign a 5-year agreement. Matt has already said, that things can be changed. It may have a cost impact, but they're amicable to having language or agreeing to, working with, I don't want to say local, but qualified people that are in this area, because that's illegal by state law, but local first would be great. How do we capture that? Again, that's what I was getting to with my question before. Procedurally, do we place this upon a motion? Do we just need to give you direction that's in the motion? What's the best way to do this to ensure that we're saying don't gavel hits and we're not forgetting about this?
I'm going to yield to the city attorney, but my own take is I think that the motion provided was adequate. And I think that the direction that I'm hearing for staff is I'd suggest maybe that staff have a yearly review of the chemicals being used with Crystal Greens. And then that staff also meet with local experts and review options for non-chemical treatments. I mean, are those the two things I'm hearing? And that perhaps Adam and Matt could come back to council, either provide a written report or come to council maybe once a year and just give you an update on where we are with the state of we can give you the state of our parks.
With one condition, I maybe
Sure,
to that,
go ahead.
which is let's take a look at how do we get there, and not just in a year, just
Mm-hmm.
So if there's anything, it could be just a fact finding. Is there anything staff can do now to say, are there any? And I'm unfortunately don't think there is, but are there grants out there? Are there organizations that do this sort of thing? I wish we had the money of a hospital, but it's what's the way to find this out, and without, crippling staff and all that sort of stuff.
The question of funding came up today, so we've not had much time to research that. I will say this is pretty routine operational work. This isn't like, often when we receive grants, it's for something that's new or that's innovate, perhaps this is innovative, but I would struggle to think of where we can find, but maybe our local experts know where we can find dollars to provide that kind of funding.
And that's a good point. We've had local experts weigh in on bike safety and so forth. We found grants that way. Okay, thank you.
Amanda.
I don't know. Can I ask why the motion is for 5 years? Is that just because that's what we're presented with and that is something that we could pass right now? Or is there another reason why you guys are wanting the 5-year?
I went with that option because that was the contract that was negotiated. And the conditions and direction that we provided staff, that can be revisited in terms of the terms, in terms of what we expect in that over time. And Matt sounds agreeable to some of those things. But also I understand that a longer term contract from a business perspective lowers the per year cost on our end as well. So it saves taxpayers money in that respect.
Gladys?
I just want to mention that there is an alternative that we authorize staff to look at other options and bring this back. And I recognize, Matt, sorry that this would delay it a little bit longer, but that there is more specific language around what we're looking like and and that Matt has experience with other organizations on how they piloted and implemented a program that did involve some qualified experts within this venue. So there's always that alternative that you don't vote for this motion and we give staff direction to continue to explore other options such as a one-year contract and then bring that back to us.
And I want to put a plug in for process. I don't want any of us to feel like if we vote down a motion, that's like not being collaborative. Like this is, our job is to decide. But if you would prefer something that isn't this motion, I would encourage you to vote no on this motion, and then we can try something slightly different. So we have a motion on the floor. I've heard that doing some ongoing fine tuning and research and figuring out some options could be included in this motion, and we're not ruling that out. So at some point here, we could call the question and vote on this motion. Before I do that, any other comments from councilors? Grant?
As I stated when I was cobbling together the motion, the hospital did a similar program. It took them 5 years apparently to put it together, and that was just one entity to do around their grounds. I'm not saying that would be a bad program and not something we shouldn't endeavor to do. Perhaps we should endeavor to do that. I just think it might take us a little bit of time to put that together and check all the boxes that we need to actually do that. And my opinion is getting this contract underway buys us the time to move in the direction that we all are generally, it sounds like we want to move in.
Any other comments? Usually I just sort of say all in favor, but I'm going to go a little slower because I know that I don't think we're all going to vote for this. So all in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 1, 2, 3. All opposed, raise your hand and say nay.
Nay.
2, 3 nays. So we got 3-3. I get to just decide. Chair votes aye, motion passes. Okay, thank you all for coming and participating, and good job us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Matt. FEMA floodplain.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. Chance to just give you just a short update. As you all know, we expected FEMA to be here in person. Then we had heard that they would need to attend by Zoom. And then late Thursday, we heard that they would not be able to attend this meeting at all. And they needed to postpone the open house that was planned for tomorrow. So this was a floodplain, open floodplain map update that they were going to present to you. So the slides were in the packet. And they actually gave the same presentation to the County Board of Commissioners last week. So if anyone wishes to see that presentation, it's actually available on the county website. We are currently waiting to hear back from FEMA as to when they will reschedule that open house. And hopefully we can have them back at council at that time. The one piece of good news is that it is, for us in the city, there are only about 45 property owners that were impacted by the new floodplain maps. So those are the folks who got letters inviting them to that open house. Unfortunately, this happened so fast, we couldn't send them letters, but we did try to email them. We put it on our social media, we tried to update them. And then we will have staff at the fire station tomorrow to greet folks if they come to the open house by accident. So we'll keep everybody informed as best we can. And we'll just see what happens at the federal level and get it rescheduled when we can.
Did FEMA get a travel ban between the county and us?
They attended the county one by Zoom.
By Zoom.
But they were planning to be here because it was the day before the open house.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, as we all know, lots of things are happening at the federal level, moving kind of fast. So we will reestablish contact with our FEMA colleagues and try to get things rescheduled.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions? Counselors at this time? Thank you, Abigail.
Great, thank you.
Now shall we recess for urban renewal? That's what it says here.
I think we were going to wait till the very end.
To the
for
very
every
end,
note.
great.
That's
So
okay?
moving on to, we have actually, I misspoke earlier. We have literally nothing on the consent.
That's right. We
agenda.
put everything under action tonight. We thought it'd be an action-filled meeting.
So I said I pulled it off the consent. That's not true. I just pulled it off from number 2 under category 7. So now we are at category 7, the resolution affirming the city of Hood River as an inclusive and welcoming city. Abigail.
Thank you. And that's why I came up here. So at our last meeting, you had a really productive conversation. You reviewed the 2017 resolution and the 2020 resolution about being an inclusive city. I took the comments that you made, incorporated, I hope that I have incorporated them into the resolution that you have before you. So looking for your feedback and comments. And if you are inclined to adopt this, there is a motion in the packet.
Thank you, Abigail. Anna.
I have one quick question on it. It incorporates the 2013 resolution, but it doesn't incorporate our 2017 resolution. Is that because this resolution is intended to supersede and replace the 2017 resolution?
Sorry, the resolution itself does reference the 2017 one, but I
Right.
think you're right. I did not include the 2017 one in the packet, probably just because I thought they were so duplicative. I could have done that. I'm sorry about that.
But it is, we're basically saying that we like all of them, right? And but this is
Right,
just kind of
right. So you
updating.
have really that you adopted in 2017, that first one, an inclusive city, and then in 2020 for racial and social justice, and now you are reaffirming the cities as a welcome. Yeah, exactly.
Thanks.
Mhm.
I will move to adopt the resolution 2025 6, affirming the city of Hood River as an inclusive and welcoming city.
Moved by Gaki,
I'll second.
second by Rivera. Further discussion?
I just want to say, in discussion quickly, that I foresee many, many things that could potentially be coming to council and rooms full of people where there are things that are not necessarily within our purview. I think all of us as leaders of the city, quote unquote, have the ability to go out to protest, use our voices, et cetera. That's not necessarily what we're supposed to be doing here. What I think that this does is reaffirm our commitment to everything that's listed in here in terms of, racial and social equity, supporting everybody within here. So I just would hope that those listening, those online, those that are paying attention to this, that, this is us telling you, what our values are, what our commitments are. It's not always something we can do, right? It might be something at the federal level, something at the state level, et cetera, who knows? But I think that this is a good way to do that.
Thank you, Doug. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thanks, everybody. Good one. Number 3, elevated sewer final design. Randy.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Here to get approval to sign the contract for the final design for the elevated sewer. We recently went out in December with an RFP and had 3 responses on January 21st. They were Tetra Tech, Windsor, and Bell Design. And then we as a staff with Grayling engineers, who are our acting city engineers, evaluated the proposals based on the RFP that we put out. And Tetra Tech was found to be the most qualified firm on this. So we're here to go with the award. I should probably start kind of the whole background. In 2017, this thing started. Berger ABAM did it wasn't the preliminary design, but it was a study to evaluate sites and the plans. They came up with one, then we went out to an RFP after that. Tetra Tech was the winning firm on that one. And they took the plans and produced a preliminary report and design to move the Berger ABAM further along. And they came up with about a 30% design, in which case we then received some funding from EPA, $575,000. So then we were able to go out for the final design. So this will be the final design. This will not include the construction of, but we will have a final design for the elevated sewer replacement.
Thank you. Question, Dana?
So I just want to understand, I read through the scope of work, but the scope of work is, this is for creating like exactly where the like equipment and facilities and all that stuff will go. That's what this contract is gonna have Tetra Tech actually complete the design for us. So that stuff isn't decided yet. Is that correct?
Correct. The basic framework is decided. I mean, there's going to be 2 pump stations with some options involved. I forget if it's second or first, but the Mount Hood Railroad pump station, we've been talking with them that the idea that the site needs to go there basically because of the gravity of the lines coming down in that general area. We had a call with Scott Webster the other day. So the actual site on that one will be negotiated. There's no way to know where that's going to go at this point, other than it's going to be in that zone. And a lot of things were decided in the preliminary, like we're going to cross under the 2nd Street Bridge, gravity down Riverside. The second pump station will pump down to our other point that goes under 84 at the west end, where it enters the wastewater treatment plant. So it's a little bit beyond just a broad scope, but yes, the positioning of the pump stations are not set in stone. We're gonna, the odds are the pump station on Industrial Street, we're looking at the port property. There were 3 possibilities on that one. Union Pacific Railroad owns kind of a chunk in there. We applied to purchase that a while back, and that's actually one of the reasons that we took so long putting the RFP out, because we were trying to acquire that property, and that does not look like it's going to happen. So the next preferred site would be port site, and we have briefly discussed it with the port about getting easements and such for that, but the easements and property acquisitions are part of this scope. So does that answer?
Yeah, it does. I wanted a little more context because there wasn't a picture.
Oh.
And I like looking at pictures, but thank you. That helps a lot.
Doug?
Thanks, Randy. And really appreciate you reaching out and corresponding with the Mount Hood Railroad on this. As someone who has been staring at that elevated sewer out the back door from where I've been working, it's a nightmare, right? I know it's leaked in the past and things like that. It's difficult to maintain. I'm looking to move to get it, move past it. Regarding Tetra Tech and this, were there any other responses that were given to the RFP weighed against Tetra Tech? It sounds like they are the experts in this area, but was there anybody else that was considered?
Bell Design came in second. Obviously, they're a great firm. We're tasked with doing these in a very fair and open, and so there's certain criteria. So we come out with the RFP, and it's how they answer the questions in their proposals that we have to judge, that boils down to how it's chosen. Which we are always trying to be very fair. This one, we're even being monitored by our funders to make sure we're fair, so it is completely above board. I mean, we work, that's basically, I'd say, yeah, it was close. Bell did a great proposal, but ultimately the committee decided to go with the Tetra Tech proposal.
Thank you for that context.
Now, we've spent a lot of meetings here talking about, I mean, I don't know what I'm supposed to not say, like not going so good with this vendor. Like but now all of a sudden they're qualified like first choice. Like, how are we feeling about that?
I've worked with a Tetra Tech on the waterfront storm, again, just trying to, yeah, I don't know where the lines are, but I've worked with them quite a bit on the waterfront stormwater since I've started. I will say that there's been a lot of back and forth. I think some of it deserved and a lot of it not so much deserved against Tetra Tech. They have performed on the waterfront. I mean, it's been a bit rough. You guys seen me up here a couple of times now on that. But as far as that one, they're still performing what they're being asked to do. On this one, there wasn't. They were the most qualified firm. We evaluated all those parts of it, like as what parts can you hold against somebody from the past, and what from now. The firm itself is and the people that we've been working with are very qualified.
Great, thank you.
Mayor, if I could add, because I also asked those questions, just our history with Tetra Tech. I think this is a very different project. This is a really straightforward project compared to stormwater, where I think the project evolved and took some side turns that I think really threw Tetra Tech for a loop. So I had that same concern, and talking to staff and learning more about the project, I'm confident that Tetra Tech will do an excellent job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ben?
Yeah, so in the packet, it mentions in terms of like the property element of this that you must get agreement from the property owners. But then there's references to the Federal Uniform Act, which my Google search seems to be a reference to eminent domain. And I know that this is sandwiched between, we're dealing with, we've got a railroad on one side and a road on the other, and it sounded like we were trying to get a property and that didn't work out. So are we anticipating any issues in terms of that element of citing, actually building these things? Because it gave me a little bit of pause reading that.
I gotta pause for a second and make sure that, for one, I'm not quite in the packet.
Yeah,
I may have slipped a
also that
word
may
or
be a
something.
question for, yeah.
We are in no intention planning on going for eminent domain on this project at the moment. I mean, I don't think you can ever rule out anything completely, but we had a really good call with Scott Webster. He offered some alternative ideas down there. I have taken them to Tetra Tech, and they have budgeted in the proposal to be looking at alternate sites. I cannot say how those sites will turn out. I mean, there's environmental permitting, there's wetlands, there's just gravity itself. I mean, there's some issues, but we are committed to working through this. Tetra Tech is also aware that one of the, probably the very first thing we're going to do when they're under contract, there's not a lot we can do until they're under contract, is meet with property owners, meet with Scott Webster and probably the port, because that will be the other site that we need. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure on that, just because those two statements seemed, two passages in the packet seemed a little bit, I don't know, somewhat contradictory to me. Maybe it's like, that's the first thing. And then I know that's like the no, obviously last resort, don't want to do that. I get all that, but I just wanted to make sure I was understanding that, because it seems like, I don't know, maybe I'm alone on that, but just wanted to clarify that point in terms of the real estate element of it.
Yeah, I mean, we have, like I said, we have no intention at this point. It appears to me that we will be able to come up with a mutually beneficial solution here. So
great, thank you.
There is a motion. Doug?
I move that we authorize the city manager to sign a professional service contract with Tetra Tech for the final design of the elevated sewer replacement project.
Moved by Stupina,
Second.
second by Paulson. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you, Randy. Chris?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. In your packet is the presentation of the second quarter for the current fiscal year financial performance. This is the first 6 months of the fiscal year, running through year end, December 31st, 2024, calendar year end. For those of you that have not been through a review such as this, there's a lot of numbers on this page. The idea is that there is the annual budget that has been presented. There is the actual results through the second quarter, so through the first 6 months of the fiscal year. Then there is a trended data analysis that is used to project what the year-end estimate is. So based on revenues and expenses, what would be the expected year-end sort of result? And then obviously there's a percentage of budget and then a comparison to the prior fiscal year. So for the current for the current fiscal year, total general fund revenues was about $6.9 million. That's 64% the annual budgeted revenue of $10.8 million. It should be noted that the vast majority of property taxes are received during the second quarter. So we would expect this to trend over 50%. Compared to the prior fiscal year, revenue receipts are 7.1% greater than that same period for the Q2 fiscal year 24. Although it is within about 0.5% of budget expectations. So we did expect a higher sort of percentage increase over the last fiscal year. Notable revenue receipts, franchise fees revenues are greater than anticipated. This is primarily the result of the collection of past due fees that was in Q1. Engineering receipts are higher than budgeted estimates. That's primarily due to the plan check fees from Mariposa Village. And then property and transit room tax, which are the two largest sources of city revenue, are both consistent with budget expectations. Parking meter receipts are 10% greater than the same period for the prior year. That is the result of the 25-cent meter rate increase, but that still is about 13% below the annual budgeted expectations. Ambulance revenues are still below budget, but during the quarter did trend more positively than we saw in the first quarter of the year. So we'll continue to take a look at that. Municipal court revenues still have the largest percentage decline of any revenue category, and that continues to underperform. Again, for the reasons that we spoke about last year, that's some staffing related considerations. General fund department expenditures are all at or within budget expectations through the second quarter. And the largest sort of change is during the budget process, we had expected a transfer from the general fund to the building department or the building fund. We have reduced the size of that transfer, again, as a result of higher than anticipated receipts from the building fund, mostly related to plan check fees from Mariposa Village. As we have discussed, the objective is a balanced budget, right? Revenues meet expenses. Currently, based on budget expectations and year-end estimates, we're looking at a operating deficit of approximately $200,000. But that should be noted that that is a modest improvement from what the original budget expected, which was a deficit of about $800,000. So we're seeing improvement sort of with regards, and if these trends continue, we would have a functionally balanced budget. With regards to other major revenue sources, so gas tax, both state and local, as well as utility charges, those are all collectively trending modestly at about 3% greater than budget expectations. And again, we'll look to see if these trends continue. Year-over-year cash balances for all funds, that includes the urban renewal districts, are $27.6 million, which is about 8% greater than the same period 1 year ago. Questions? I should go through this one.
Thank you, Chris. I see no questions.
That's great.
Perfectly done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we need to take formal action to accept that in any way? Great. All right, development code, Dustin.
Thank you, Mayor. In your package tonight, you have a contract for professional service agreement. This is for phase 2 of your development code update. As some of you have been engaged for the past year and some of you for the past couple of months, we are moving from the development code audit, which really concluded earlier this year, moving to phase 2, which is the development code review or really redevelopment process, the rewriting the code to address clear and objective standards. This contract is for the city's portion of phase 2. The contract or this project, which is about anywhere between 12 and 18 months, is funded by the state of Oregon DLCD program, and half of it is funded by housing. This agreement, approximately $111,000, is the city's contribution to this project. Have the contract before you. Any questions? Be happy to address them.
Thank you, Dustin. Grant.
In our packet says this process will take approximately 12 months. Is there a way to make that less than 12 months?
Well, a lot of the actually process has to do with really goal 1, which is citizen involvement. So the engagement of your interested parties and groups really takes a lot of time, and you know there's a technical aspect, but there's also taking that engagement, and that's really if you look at the time associated with it as well as your cost, that's citizen engagement. So you know, the direction we took was really based upon council's direction to move the contract, and we adjusted the contract and the service and the scope actually to reflect that. So if you wanted to change the engagement process, reduce that, it would reduce the time and budget. So.
Given the engagement constraints that we set, this is the fastest we can get it done, is what you're saying.
Yeah, we think this is a reasonable approach and fast. So the 12 months is the code development, and we expect a 6-month process possibly after that for the legislative, actually the approval. So, which has its own custom requirements, citizen engagement, public hearing processes, which ultimately come to you.
Anna.
I was thinking about something that Councilman Rivera said earlier about, you know, we as an organization have a priority for affordable housing, and I agree with that. But I also think we owe an obligation to our current citizens and the people that live here to make things as efficient. And, you know, we want this to continue to be a wonderful place to live. And as I was reading through the scope of work, one of the primary outcomes is to facilitate housing production, affordability, and reduce barriers to housing development. I think those are great, but I'm curious if this anticipated code amendment is going to make it easier for city residents to maintain and improve our homes. And I wrote out a question, and bring clarity and efficiencies to the permitting process. And if yes, can you give us an example of what we might anticipate from this phase 2 through the code update?
Process is definitely one of them. You'll have the opportunity to consider what type of processes are necessary in the code for folks. One of the stated objectives and one of the things that Oregon will fund is clear and objective standards for needed residential. The code and the law has changed such that when our code was written, we had a lot of standards that were based around subjective standards, items that were compatible, that really are no longer it's no longer an acceptable practice. Those require more discretion. And when I have to exercise discretion, I have to have a longer process by law. You have the opportunity to shift things to, if you, well, we have to adopt clear and objective standards for needed housing to comply with state law. That will allow some processes to be shortened or move to more expedited processes. So you will have the opportunity to decide in the end, how do we manage that? But we're definitely looking for a more you look in the code, another goal is a more user-friendly, both for the staff to use as well as cross-board everyone. A code that is clear, that provides us good directions, that's a useful tool, that should really be, to some extent, agnostic to what you're working on, whether it's commercial, industrial, whether it's new housing starts, existing housing, we're looking for that to be a takeaway and overall benefit to both users and staff.
Exactly what I wanted.
Okay,
Thank
good.
Good answer.
Like to make a motion? I move to approve a professional services agreement with MIG to complete the development code audit process phase 2.
Moved by Stepina,
I'll second.
second by Gaky. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion passes.
Thank you
Mayor-
all.
Thank you, Dustin. Mariposa Water Sewer Stormwater Will.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. We have for your review and approval, a contract with Business Oregon to receive $2,438,595 for water, sewer, and storm infrastructure to serve Mariposa Village. You all know about this project, so I won't go into too much background. Just to note that from day one, we knew that free land wasn't going to be enough, and there was going to need to be additional public subsidy to make this project a reality. Beginning from the purchase option agreement signed several years ago, we were on the hook to provide or facilitate $1 million in funding. As this project has gone on, costs have only increased over time. And so when the Oregon legislature offered funding for infrastructure that would support housing, we jumped at the chance to apply, and were successful in getting an appropriation carved out for this project in SB 1530 in the 2024 legislative session. So it took a while to work out the contract, but we have it here for your approval. You will notice that the funds do only last until June 30th, 2025, and are subject to reappropriation thereafter. We do have a high confidence that these will be carried forward, and that's everything that we're hearing from both our legislative, our lobbyist, as well as from contacts at Business Oregon, is everyone's intention, and many other cities are also dependent upon these funds carrying forward past June 30th. So with that, I'll answer any questions, or there's also a motion in your packet.
Thank you, Will. In terms of context, I love the fact that we, the city, promised to give or get $1 million, and we got $2.5 million and didn't cost our residents anything. That's fantastic. Doug.
To make a motion? I move to authorize the city manager to sign an agreement with the Oregon Business Development Department for $2,438,595 in Oregon Senate Bill 1530 funding.
Moved by Stepina.
I'll second.
Second by Paulson. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion passes. Just in terms of context, I this morning chaired the Housing Authority meeting where we approved the next step in the blizzard of steps, where we agreed to create a LLC to own the place. And like, it is just, there's a lot of pistons moving and a lot of different engines, like, good job us. Finally, climate pollution reduction grant. Dustin.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a grant that is facilitated by the DEQ. What you have before you is an intergovernmental agreement that would be signed between the state of Oregon and the city to employ approximately $3 million in federal funding to space efficient housing within the city. This would ideally facilitate nearly 150 new dwelling units within the city, leveraging some of the private sector funds in this federal money. Currently, we've been working on this for a while. This funding package is on hold. However, we wanted to engage and get you all equipped so that we were ready in case this money did become available once again. So working with the DEQ, this is their standard agreement. We have made some modifications after working with finance and urban renewal to get some of our payment and reporting terms down. But we wanted to get you engaged before, in hopes that this project and these funds become available once again.
Thanks, Dustin. Question. Brad.
What do you mean this funding is on hold exactly?
The funding comes from the EPA. It was to be awarded to the state for this climate-friendly efficient housing program. At this point, and DEQ would be the administrator of that money. At this point, that those federal funds and the program has been put on hold at the federal level.
That's about what I thought. Thank you. On the under the bullet point on the first page, the first bullet point, I don't feel like something might have been left off there. It says build space efficient housing defined as an average of 800 square feet per unit with some. And I'm not sure what was supposed to be. What was supposed to be there?
Actually, the units match up. Yeah, that is an omission, so we can clean that up. The program and we worked with DEQ on that. It actually could be up to 1,200 square feet to match our middle housing code.
Okay.
For 3-bedroom units, it's really directed towards 80% AMI, towards units between 600 and 1,200 square feet. So it looked like part of that has fallen off.
Gotcha. Thank you. And speaking of AMI, for 2025, what is it for Hood River? Do we know? Every time I'm reading these and I'm like, what is it for
it depends on household size, but I believe in the past, actually the Housing Authority went out of their way and spent their own funds to have that updated ahead of time. I believe it was approximately 92,000 for a family of 4 within the city.
Is 100% of AMI.
Was 100%. That was 100%.
Great, thank you. In the, sorry, I forget where it is exactly. I think it's on the first page of the draft agreement. There's a reference in here. Apologies, I don't have the exact page number. There's a reference in here. It says that we have to notify DEQ if all funds haven't been used by December 1st, 2025. Why is that? Is there like an expiration to this? Is it just for reporting purposes or what?
For reporting, they'll want to see. I'm assuming that is also going to be pushed back, given that we're on delay. I mean, what they would want to do is they would have the opportunity to reallocate funds that went unspent to the other 4 cities. So if we could not expend our funds, they would move those funds for reimbursement to Tillamook County, Bend, or Eugene. The other 4 cities.
So if I'm understanding this right, if there's not if there aren't projects that are shovel ready or completely built, or what are we talking about?
It would be we would be looking for some level of commitment. So these are underway, they're in development. The 5 years is really to completion. So we would be looking to identify number and likely sources that were eligible.
Gotcha. So this would need to be initiated in some form by December 1st.
Correct.
Gotcha. Well, not now, but
in a time certain, again, based on getting this off the ground.
And then my final question on this is, it mentions that there's $150,000 given to the city in terms of administration of this grant program. Does staff feel like that would be adequate to administer this program? And if not, how would we supplement that? Because it's really disappointing to hear about this being on hold, because I think this is a really fantastic program.
Yeah, the 150,000, considering the program is really a quarterly reporting effort, is we're great to see that in place. So we will have to administer it on the ground. You consider it a full-time FTE executive position. That's a good amount of money to exercise the lift.
Thank you.
There is a motion.
I motion to approve the draft IGA between the state of Oregon for climate space efficient, affordable and workforce housing grant.
Moved by Gagi,
Second.
second by Mitchell. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion passes. Awesome. We're going to go down to mayor comments after a short break. Okay. That takes us to city manager comments.
1 sec. Thank you, Mayor. I just had one update. A couple meetings ago, we talked about naming the park and the street, and the question had come up about Pato Park. Had we consulted with our neighbors on this? And I wanted to just let you know that I think the naming group itself included representatives from Nichiwana and from next door. But we also consulted with the group natives along the Big River, and the mayor's equity group discussed that. So I believe Pato Park got a thumbs up from all of those groups. So with that, we're going to move forward with Pato Park. And I think those are all my comments for you tonight. Thanks.
All right. Committee reports, starting with Gladys.
Thank you. MCAC meets tomorrow, so I will have an update for you all at the next meeting. I also did miss the last county meeting, so I have a meeting with my peers this week to connect and hear about some of the items at the county meeting. Besides that, nothing else from me. Doug will give an update on Saruta.
Thank you, Gladys. Amanda.
Got my introduction to the Energy Council, and that's exciting. And then I think the meeting is the beginning of March, first week of March, something like that. So I'll go to my first meeting soon, and I'll have more to report then.
Thank you.
And library, I reached out to Karen from the library board, but we haven't arranged a meeting yet. That's in progress.
Thanks. Grant?
Sure. I'll throw somebody a curveball. Will and I went to the county and presented the interjurisdictional transfer. And so for fun, Will, why don't you update council on that presentation, since Will was the one that gave it.
Oh, good.
Yes. Delegating, sir.
Well, actually, I have that in my administrator update for the URA, so.
Never mind, you'll hear it later.
Anything else?
That's it.
Doug?
I still have yet to connect with the school district. I'll be following up from my email to Megan West to do that, to make sure we get connected there. Visit Hood River had a board meeting, so I attended that. That was last Wednesday. City things that we discussed, one of which was talk to them about tribal parking, which is something that we met on a couple weeks ago, and just made sure that they had no objections to that program, and they did not. So that was positive. Also, gave several city updates here and there. Not a lot to speak of in terms of the time of year and everything, but they continue with their Datafy system and to be able to collect a lot of information. And yeah, talk to them about how our work plan was passed and how we wanted to look at options for, closing streets down more frequently and partnering with them and other, entities to do that. They did speak about, positive and negative feedback received about First Fridays. People were generally in favor of it, et cetera, and well attended. Something else that came up there that I wanted to address, and I spoke at length with fellow board member and Commissioner Babbitts about, is that they had received some complaints about the protesting that was happening and blocking access to Pure Stoke and some other businesses. I think it's just worth noting that Arthur and I were speaking about sort of the history of that area and some of the decisions that were made in terms of previous councils in urban renewal, dollars used to really expand that area, put in bathrooms, even the features where you have for speed reduction, sidewalks going out. Those were chosen because that could be a place for more people to gather. That's historically been a place for people to gather in the city of Hood River and to protest. And I think that it's a great thing that we have that great space. And I know that we all are in full support of the First Amendment. I know some of us were at that protest. Thank you, Mayor Blackburn, for being there. Also, just as it occurs to me, not necessarily as via Hood River, but if there are protests and things like that are taking place, make sure to let councilors know via email, reach out via our city voicemail. I, for one, am trying to stay off social media these days because it is just a mess out there. So I know there's a lot of people that did not know about this particular protest, that happened. I guess it was
President's Day.
President's Day, yeah, or not my President's Day, as it was called. But yeah, make sure to keep us informed. But yeah, just wanted to highlight that, yeah, it's a space that's very intentional. I also met with the Saruta board. So a lot going on there. So first thing to call out, I have a bit of a PSA for the Taste of Saruta. So the Taste of Saruta is live and is going to be at the Mount Hood Winery on Sunday, March 16th, between the hours of 6 and 8 p.m. This is something that last year we did the bento boxes, if you can recall that. And now it's back, and there's going to be a delegation arriving on the 13th of 19 people. That's
March 13th.
yeah, March 13th, correct. Yeah, that it's gonna be 19 individuals, 3 of which are adults, and the rest are children. They're paired up. I know that right now they're also looking for some host families. These are middle schoolers, and essentially this the Taste of Saruta benefit dinner and auction will have chicken, sushi, vegetable lo mein, rice dumplings, cookies, bottles of wine. It's $40 a ticket or $500 for a table of 8. So you can email hoodriversistercity@gmail.com to get tickets via the board members, or reach out to a board member if you know one. Councilor Rivera and I are both on the board there. Interesting to note, just for the first time since we've had 2 councilors, we will just have 1 vote that will be on the board. So just making sure you know that. Also happy to report that Councilor Saunders went off of the board as the city councilor, but was reelected to the board as an individual. So Megan Saunders is remaining there. If anybody has any questions about the general timeline for the visit, they arrive on the 13th. There's a small gathering for them. The 14th, they will go to whatever middle school that their paired school age child goes to, so Y East or Hood River Middle. They'll also be going to the Timbers game on the 16th, prior to going down to the Mount Hood Winery for the Taste of Saruta. In the morning, they'll be going to the cemetery. They'll also be planting a tree at Mann Park. So yeah, just a lot going on. After that, they actually get to go to Meadows on the Monday, and then they leave the Tuesday. So it's a quick Thursday to Tuesday sort of trip. But couldn't be happier to be nearing the 50th anniversary of this program, which is just incredible. And yeah, nothing more to say there. But again, please reach out to Councilors Rivera or myself if you have any questions regarding the Taste of Saruta or anything else with the Sister City program, host families, et cetera.
Thanks, Doug. Ben.
I had a great initial meeting with Columbia Area Transit Vice Chair Megan Ramey. Met at this little business called Volcanic Bottle Shop, and just had a nice meeting, and talked for a long time about different things regarding each of our relationships with public transportation, stuff that's going on at CAT. And then I also attended the board meeting at CAT on Wednesday, and it was just wanted to introduce myself in person. There wasn't like a ton on the agenda, but one of the things to note is that purchasing property for a new park and ride that's directly across the street from CAT, because their bus barn that they've got now is pretty small and can't accommodate all the vehicles that they have, and so they'll be turning the old park and ride, or the current park and ride, into utilizing space for that. So it sounds good all around. And I was trying to find the exact statistic, but there was, I can't remember if it was in the packet or in the meeting itself, but there was mentioned that, like ridership on the like city route specifically for CAT had increased fairly significantly, which I think is great because it's not, necessarily so indicative of tourism, although it's a component of it, as opposed to like, Columbia Gorge Express or Gorge Mountain Express or stuff like that. Shows a lot of buy-in from the community in terms of, people using this service for, commuting or doctor's appointments or grocery store or any of the other things that public transportation are utilized for at a local level. So that was great to see. And that was pretty much it.
Anna.
I'm actually not on a committee, but I, for my liaison duties, I have reached out to Columbia Gorge Community College and hopefully will contact or connect with their board president, I believe, Ms. Morgan, in the next couple of days. We'll see.
I went to the Emperor's birthday in Japan, in Portland, the Emperor of Japan. Super entertaining. They super gracious, excited. I had a long talk with the head of the Portland Sapporo Sister City organization. That's like 70 years old, 59, I think it started, super old. Apparently, Japan is perhaps Oregon's largest trading partner, either export or import. I can't remember the exact, but second in one and first in the other. Never imagined that, but it's a very relevant business relationship. We have a sister state, actually. I hadn't realized that. But I got the shout out for the mayor attending. They're all excited about the mayor attending. It was a nice sort of capacity building thing. I had invited the Consul General of Oregon out here to Hood River, and he came and we had a nice chat. He's now retiring, so now there's a new guy that I have to woo, but all in all, very fun, and they were excited about our sister city activities and welcoming, and I got to hear the 2 national anthems, which was amazing. I alerted my Equity Advisory Council about this inclusivity resolution tonight. I wanted them to know that this is something we're doing and considering, and I appreciated their input on it. I'll be meeting with them again on the 13th, March 13th, so that meeting is coming up. I met with my other entity representative, Torb, from the port, and I had a nice coffee and sort of traded high points and planned for the next one, and seems like on track with that. Intergovernmental relationship seems like a valuable. Yeah. And I have 2 here on the printed page. We need a representative to Regional Solutions. I understand that Councilor Rivera's schedule has kind of filled up and you're looking to share that spot. We do not necessarily get a spot, but I think it's pretty likely that we would be a serious contender to be considered because we're the city of Hood River. So I don't, somebody had an idea of perhaps being willing to do that. And Abigail, you knew who it was. Help me remember. Oh, and she looked at that. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So are you willing to serve?
I am willing.
Okay, so the question is, shall we decide that we, the city, put up Ben as to be considered? Everybody okay with that? I do think it benefits the city to have a voice at that table. Sometimes money comes from
Super.
it.
Thank you for that. I will share that information with Nate Stice, who is the Regional Solutions person for this area, and he will pass that along to the governor. Thank you.
And then we have some banking to do. We need, what, a motion or what?
I'm going to look to the city recorder on what exactly we need, and we need this in our minutes so that the bank will accept council president as the new signer. Jen?
Yeah, so the bank just needs something in the minutes stating that Dan Miller's no longer on council. He needs to be removed, and then Councilor Rivera will be the new second signer for the city for council.
So will somebody say so moved?
So moved.
Moved by Sabina.
Second.
Second by Mitchell. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion passed.
Thank you.
Keep it back up. Oh, and then finally, I did go to the total social media thing. I heard about it like from a friend who saw it on Facebook. It was very grassroots. I expected some more sort of vertical leadership, but it was very like organic. There was no amplifier, like just folks and signs, and all 4 corners were occupied, and the media came and first they said I wasn't there, and then my friend wrote a letter and they said he was there and they made a correction and stuff. So it was very organic and peaceable and enthusiastic, and that happened. All right. Council comments, anything in general? Anna?
Nope.
Ben? Doug?
No.
Grant?
I had a general question that I asked Abigail, but I'd asked the rest of us as well. Is there, since the bottom of the stairs and whatnot is sort of becoming a focal point generally in our community, is there any interest in additional traffic control points on that intersection?
All right.
Or for example, putting a stop sign there on State Street.
Yeah. So how about Abigail and I add this to our agenda this week and figure out a way to bring this idea back to council? How's that sound? Yeah? Or I suppose, I'm just thinking this through. Who would like to put this on the agenda? Talk about, give me a thumbs up, people, you think? Or we don't know yet. We just are first. Abigail and I will bring it back.
Great. I
you,
think a process would be for me to talk to Public Works and to police for their opinion and analysis first.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Grant.
That's it. Thanks.
Amanda?
No.
Gladys?
Nothing from me, thank you.
I want to say something. I was eating.
Ben?
Yeah, that was bad timing with these almonds. Doug kind of touched on it a little bit earlier in terms of, not letting necessarily some of the federal level stuff take up all the oxygen in the room when we have very local issues to, deal with. But, with the things that are happening at the federal level, I am concerned about how some of that trickles down to us, which is, kind of gave me pause about the landscaping contract, just because I'm, wondering like what things might be coming down the pipe that potentially jeopardize different things that we may end up working on that are things that are very important to us that we might have to come up with funds from somewhere else. And so, I was really disappointed to hear about the DEQ situation. And so when there's something like that, I will plan on asking a question of why is that being held up? What exactly is happening, so that people can realize how things at the federal level are harming things at the local level, because that is incredibly disappointing to hear. So
Today at the Housing Authority, an issue came up on this because the way I think of it is I and this city are represented by Congresswoman Dexter and Senators Merkley and Wyden, who are obviously like not in lockstep with the president. But the eastern edge of the Housing Authority includes Congressman Bentz's district. And so I feel like I now have standing to say, hey, we'd really rather have, supportive vouchers for our residents to stay in subsidized housing rather than not. So that gives me sort of an opportunity to chime in a way that feels meaningful. So I don't always know when that is, but that one sort of got clear for me. Now, we're going to have an executive session, but first we're going to go to urban renewal. So I will put a pause on this meeting at 8:13 and hand the gavel to Chair Stepina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to call to order the Hood River Urban Renewal Agency. First things first, are there any agenda additions or corrections other than the time that we started it?
There is not.
Okay. There's nobody that's here from the audience. Is there anybody online that wishes to speak? So no business from the audience. Okay, the first thing that we have today is the consent agenda, which includes the approval of meeting minutes. Any discussion about the meeting minutes or corrections, additions, subtractions? Seeing none,
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the minutes as presented.
it's first from
I'll
Blackburn,
second.
Second.
I'll
second
second.
from Grant Paulson. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Consent agenda passes. Okay, Will, we're up with regular business items. The first is Urban Renewal Advisory Committee appointment. Thank you. We've needed this.
Yeah, so we have 2 vacancies to fill and we're continuing to advertise, but we did receive an application from Steve Winkle, who was actually served on the inaugural class of the Urban Renewal Advisory Committee. He was on there in 2012 to 2014. And has recently retired. He's a architect. He also has volunteered on the Planning Commission for the city of Hood River in that same time frame. And in retirement had wanted to volunteer again for the Urban Renewal Advisory Committee. So me and Councilor Gaki interviewed him and found him acceptable and good to be on the committee, and so offer up his application for confirmation and approval from the agency board.
Great. Is there anything you'd like to add, Councilor Gaki, or? Okay. Any questions for Will and Councilor Gaki?
Thanks for serving on that, Amanda.
Yeah, appreciate that. Okay, there's a motion.
I move to appoint Scott Winkle to the Hood River Urban Renewal Advisory Committee.
Motion by Rivera. Second by Cavallari. Any discussion?
Can we correct his name to Steve Winkle?
Oh, did I have the wrong?
Yeah, in his application, it's.
Oh,
Steve.
yes, I
In our
see
packet,
that.
it's Scott.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh,
That's all.
Correct my motion. Apologies.
is that sufficient?
It's on the record.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Sorry, Gladys. Chair votes aye. Welcome and thank you, Mr. Winkle, for being willing to serve, and thank you, Councilor Gaki and Will, for conducting. Okay, next up, Will.
Yeah, next up is acceptance or approval of a qualified pool list of professional and personal services firms. So the agency put out an RFQ back last fall to get respondents across a broad range of service categories that we may need to move forward projects over the next 5 years. The list of service categories are in your packet. And the goal is to have at our fingertips kind of a rapid response as funding opportunities or development proposals come in, that we can react fast. I think we remember the Stonehenge person coming in that had an idea for middle housing. That stuff can just happen at any time. You'll have a developer at your door saying, I'm looking at building this property. I have this gap. Where can you help me? And this will give us the ability to have the expertise that we need to have right at our fingertips to engage. And then also this will be a way to quickly move forward other more planned projects that are just smaller in scale. So we received 37 responses to our RFQ across those 22 service categories, and we chose to interview 27 of those firms. The interview panel consisted of me, Dustin Nielsen, the planning director, and Chris Longinetti, the finance director, and then also Andre Chershnin, I'm not going to get his last name, who is our development services contractor, engineer. So of the 27 firms, we're recommending that 24 of those get added to the qualified pool list. And for those that are in the architectural engineering, land surveying, and related services, those folks will be eligible for direct awards up to $100,000 per contract, basically per project. And then the other category is personal services, which is more general consulting outside of that construction realm. And that would be only $10,000 per contract. Anything that goes above those thresholds, we'll need to do a different solicitation. So we can't use the direct award off of this list. And I have a little summary of each one of those firms in your packet. And then if for the electronic packet, I have the actual responses from the firms if you wanted to dig into that. Overall, I'd just say that we were really impressed by the qualifications of the people who and their enthusiasm to want to work here. It was clear that there was a lot of firms out there, a lot of really good firms that just want to work in Hood River. I think because of its reputation and also just getting to work in this environment and kind of having this as the canvas that they work in. So really came away with that takeaway. With that, I'll answer any questions you have, but there's also a suggested motion in your packet. And I would say that there is no obligation today. We're not awarding any contracts, and we're not obligating ourselves to spending $1 with creating these lists.
Great. Questions for Will? Amanda?
So if we like approve this list and then the project comes up, then you just like, you go pick who you choose to be the best one or who's available or whatever. Is that how, like, when we need them, well, I guess what's the process of that?
Yeah, I plan to bring all these projects back to you. If it's something very small, like maybe, a couple $1,000 that's pre-planned and we're going to do it, I might just go take someone to do that work. But ahead of awarding a contract for something like, say, doing the preliminary engineering on Mount Adams and Cascade Roundabout, that's big enough where I'd reach out to a few of them to get their different approach, their budget, pick the best one, and then pull it all together for your approval as an agency board.
Okay, so without this list, you would have to do this whole RFP process and then do that.
Right.
Kind of, or I don't know, maybe it's kind of all pushed together at that point, but okay.
This could be much more, thank you, it's good to clarify that. So this becomes much more expedited, informal work. But I'd say also one of the things that these folks are going to be really good at is helping. Say I think something's going to cost less than $100,000. I start scoping it with these folks and I learn it's way more than that. Then actually maybe what I use one of these folks for is to help me write the RFP.
Any other questions for Will? With that, I will entertain a motion.
Move the Urban Renewal Agency Board approve the proposed qualified pool list of personal and professional services firms.
Moved by Blackburn. Second by Cavalieri. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you all. Okay, with that, the administrator update.
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple points. I'll start with the one that Councilor Polson alluded to earlier today, is that the councilor and I presented to the county commissioners to ask for their support for our jurisdictional transfer request to the legislature. Basically going around collecting logos that we can add to our fact sheet when we go talk to legislators. And we think that's important because certainly as we're in this context of the transportation bill and just how tight resources are going to be, we're not just talking about the importance of the street to that neighborhood. We're talking about it in the context of overall state transportation funding priorities. And so to have be able to clearly state that it's not just us, but the county, school district, CAT, we're all aligned saying this is a high priority for us. We think is going to be helpful when we're communicating with legislators. So we made that presentation, and the county commissioners unanimously recommended and supported our request. So I've already added their logo to the fact sheet. Also let you know that Hood River Alliance has taken over 1217 May Street about 2 weeks ago. So they were able to get their insurance put together, reviewed through our insurance agent, approved, and they paid their $1 in rent. And I gave them the keys, and they're now in there gonna fix it up before they'll start using it. And just as a reminder, with 6 months notice, we get it back at any time for when we need to build that roundabout. And then lastly, I wanted to let you know that Portland State, an engineering capstone class for engineering students, has chosen Hood River and specifically the connection on 12th Street between Belmont and Pacific for a student project to evaluate different bike ped connections. So that is identified in the Safe Routes to School plan as a really critical linkage. And unfortunately, our Height Street State plan kind of stops at Belmont. And so they're gonna put together several options, conceptual options. I'll keep the board involved, and I let the students know that the advisory committee would love to, hear any reports or have input in any way that they could. That's all the news.
Thank you all. With that, items from agency members, anything to address for urban renewal specifically from the agency members? Just one from me that Kate Hoffman is chairing the URAC, the Urban Renewal Advisory Committee, and she'll be joining Will and I for periodic updates, so similar to what we have for meeting with the city manager, et cetera. So we'll have committee representation there. I think that's really great because Kate will be able to give us a lot more context of what's coming from the committee. Okay, anything else for the good of the order on this? All right, with that, I will adjourn the Hood River Urban Renewal Agency meeting of February 24th, 2025, and hand it back to Mayor Blackburn to reconvene the city council meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will reconvene at 8:25 and we will go into executive session. I will read the script while we take care of the mechanics. City Council will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.661E to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. Representatives of the news media and designated staff are allowed to attend the executive session. No decision may be made nor final action taken in executive session. The executive session is anticipated to last 25 minutes. At the end of the session, the city council meeting will be adjourned and no action will be taken. We will now discontinue the live feed and recording.